Is the next pope going to be an African? This has been the questions in the heart of many people, especially from Africa. Well, let's watch this video and I assure you we could learn a lot from this Reverend Father who is here to talk about the life and legacy of Pope Francis. Of course, we know that the life and legacy of Pope Francis cannot be overemphasized or talked about. Of course, Pope Francis has lived a life that is really worthy of emulating. I'd like you to take your time and watch this video to the end and let's see what next after Pope Francis. Do well to subscribe to this channel if you're not following us. Follow us so that we can continue to give you more updates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me in the studio, and I say good evening to all the viewers. First of all, let us start with the legacy before we talk about whether the church will continue or not. You know, and we have heard so many testimonies pointing towards the same direction. You know, that Pope Francis, you cannot talk about him without mentioning the word mercy. He was a man full of mercy. Because that is what the church stands for. If you find a church without mercy, it is a contradiction in terms. Jesus came to preach mercy. He came to show mercy. He is mercy himself. And that is what the church and all of us, clerics, must stand for. The message of Pope Francis is that God never tires of forgiving us, no matter what that sin is, as long as we are repentant. Just like the story of the prodigal son, he is always willing to welcome us. His arms are open. Look at the cross. Look at the extent to which he went. And that is the church. In fact, I say to people that the church exists because of sin and sinners. If there were no sinners, Christ would not have come in the first place. And if Christ had not come, there wouldn't be a church. So the church is a place where mercy exists fundamentally. So that is one of his legacies. And you cannot talk about Pope Francis without talking about that joyful aspect. In fact, one of his apostolic exhortations is called the joy of the gospel. You know, and when you see him, you see joy radiating around him, because he says that those who accept the offer of salvation are set free from sin. They are set free from sorrow. They are set free from loneliness. It's not as if you won't have problems, but when you have Jesus, you are not overwhelmed. He gives you the grace to remain joyful in the midst of the storm. You know, somebody was saying to me just this evening, he saw the picture of the Pope lying in state, zoomed it and looked at the face. And she smiled and said, even in his death, Pope Francis appears to be smiling. Look at his last appearance on Easter Sunday. He came out to bless the people, you know.
Even against his doctors.
Exactly. So that is who he is. Then you have been talking about inclusiveness. He was taken from the peripheries and he never forgot where he was coming from. You know, refugees, prisoners, homosexuals that ordinarily you would just sweep aside. He says, no, everybody is welcome to the house of God. Because if you close the door against certain persons because you perceive them to be sinners, what is the hope of salvation? Jesus himself says, I have come not to call the righteous, but I have come because of these sinners. So there is nobody, according to Pope Francis, and that is our faith, who is not welcome into the church. Then you will talk about his simplicity, you know, carrying his bag, leaving the apostolic palace to live in Casa Santa Marta.
And he gave instructions to be buried on the ground with no ornamentation whatsoever, except Franciscus, which is Italian for Francis.
Francis, exactly. Yes. A life also, look at the car he rides in. I remember seeing that video of his visit to the US. The big cars, I don't know what they are called, were there, you know. But they had warned the US government, just as you keep these big cars, keep one small one for him. And that was what he rode in, you know, teaching us to
humility.
Yes, humility, the message of humility. That was very glaring. Look at his shoes, look at his pectoral cross, Then you cannot talk about Pope Francis without talking about unity. Unity. He says we are all children of God, and whether we are Christians or Muslims, whether we are Hindus or Jews, we are all children of God, and we should live as one. He says what unites us is far, far, far more than what divides us.
Now, the next is going to be, after the 9 days of mourning, the conclave, which will end when the black smoke comes out. The longest, like I said, white smoke comes out, and we know that a pope has been chosen. Maybe I should talk about what chances are there, for an African pope. I know they talked about having a Ghanaian cardinal and some other cardinals. What chances are there of having an African pope, and what lessons can leaders draw from the life and times of this particular pope?
Yeah, let me begin from the last one. We have talked about his legacies, and that's why we keep repeating them, so that all of us, wherever we belong, whatever positions we occupy, can learn from him, his simplicity, his fundamental option for the poor, right from the beginning of his pontificate, when a lot of people from Argentina, his home country, said they were coming to Rome to be part of the coronation ceremony. He said, no, don't come. It costs a lot of money to come from Argentina to Rome. Use that money to take care of the poor. Leaders can learn from that. Let us cut down on non-essentials. Let us focus on those essential things instead of using big cars, building big houses. Let us think of the common good, those we are called to lead. That is the message of Pope Francis. That's one of the things we can learn from him. And then in Nigeria, where we have lots of religion, especially the two dominant ones, Christians and Muslims, living at loggerheads, killing one another, we can learn from him. He wrote one of his encyclicals is titled Fratelli Tutti. We are all brothers. We are all brethren. We can live as one. Look at his funeral today. People from different walks of life, from different religions were there. And that itself is a message of peace. But going back to this question of possibility of an African leader, yes, I have been following the trend, and people have been talking about this. What I would say is that people should not forget that this is the church we're talking about. Yeah. And positions like that, positions like mine, I'm a priest, positions such as the bishopric, deacons, even amongst the laity, all these positions, we refer to them as vocation.
Okay.
Vocation is from the Latin word vocare, which means to call. So you can decide, I want to be a priest, but if God has not called you to be a priest, you will not be a priest. So the position of the Pope is also linked to what I'm talking about. It's a vocation. It's a calling. Don't forget that the person we're talking about, the Pope, is the successor of St. Peter, who was called by Jesus Christ. Peter did not choose himself. And it's the same thing we must have at the back of our minds. So whether it's going to be an African candidate, whether it's going to be somebody from Europe, Latin America, only God knows.
He was the first Latin American anyway. He's and a Jesuit for
God
that matter.
will call the person he deems most suitable for the position.
We'll leave it there.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Reverend Father Michael Banjo, who is a Secretary General, Catholic Secretariat of Nigeria, for being on